All right. Well, it's 12:03, so let's go ahead and get started. We got 55 people on the call, and I am thrilled to have Rupert Springfield here. I'm actually got his contact information from Valerie Aston, who I've also had on a live session before, who runs Start Business in France. And anyway, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Rupert and his partner Frank run GîteGuru.com. So if you want to learn about this is a Rupert, would you call it like a consultancy
Yep.
business
Yep.
for people who are either interested in running a Gîte, maybe getting started in it, or for people who have already a Gîte. And for those of you that don't know, a Gîte is a rental property, frequently like attached to or like purchased with maybe their a primary residence that they're living in, but not necessarily. Anyway, typically short-term rentals, kind of like Airbnbs. Anyway, this site he helps people develop those, the business aspects of it, trying to make it profitable, which is important. Another thing, and I'll send these links out in the follow-up email with the replay. Another thing that they do, obviously, is run their own Gîtes. And so if you go to lemasdordone.com, which again, don't worry, I'll get the links or I'll put them in the chat. They have some unbelievably beautiful Gîtes that you can actually go stay in. They're fantastic. And then the third thing I'll mention is the Gîte podcast, which is on YouTube. And we need to give this podcast some love because it's fantastic content. So if you go to YouTube and search for the Gîte, Gite podcast, you will find it there. Make sure you subscribe to that because it's fantastic information, not only for Gîtes and Gîte owners, but also you get to kind of see the behind the scenes of some absolutely stunning Gîte properties, which is fantastic. Rupert, I think it is time for us to talk about finding and running a profitable Gîte in France.
My favorite subject.
Your favorite subject. All right, let me make sure I got you spotlighted. There we go. All right, take it away.
Well, I think the first thing to say is what you were just mentioning. What is actually a gîte? Because I think Americans can get a bit confused about what we're talking about. So, gîte is the French word for a independent, self-catering holiday rental. It's as simple as that. It's different from a bed and breakfast because a bed and breakfast is when you rent out actual bedrooms in your own home. A gîte is a separate dwelling that you're renting out. It could be on your property or it could be, completely on its own property and you don't live there at all. And I think one of the confusions also comes by the dominance that Airbnb has in America. You now say that you've booked an Airbnb for the week or for the weekend, and an Airbnb is therefore a word that's kind of replaced gîte in the vernacular. But when I talk about Airbnb, I'm talking about the platform. And in America, you really only need to advertise on the platform Airbnb to get lots of bookings. In France, that's not the case. Airbnb is very important, but you need to be visible on more platforms than just Airbnb. So I try not to talk about Airbnb unless I'm talking about the platform because it slightly confuses things.
Well, I apologize. I'm the one that set
No, 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 no.
set it up. So,
Yeah, no, that's okay. And I think in Canada, you call it cottages, a short-term rental. But basically, it's a holiday accommodation. And they allow people to come to an area of France and live like a local because you're having to cook for yourself and buy food in the market and really experience what it's like. So it's a great way of exploring France, we think.
I would agree with that. We stayed in several gîtes when we were in France previously, and those are some of the most memorable spots. I highly recommend it. So, do you want to talk about kind of? Do you have a process or formula that you normally go through for, finding good good locations for Gîtes, and not only the
Yeah.
location as far as the town, but like specific properties?
Yeah, so I think it all depends on who you are. I think in our experience, there are three different types of gîte owners. There are people who live abroad and want a second home in France. And because they're not going to use that second home that much, they want to try and make it pay for itself by renting it out when they're not there. So they're the second homeowners. Um, You've got to ask yourself, though, that if you accept paying guests in your second home, is it actually going to feel like your home anymore? This is a really interesting point that comes up time and again in the podcast when I talk to sheet owners who actually live abroad and have a second home, that they say, actually, our focus is on creating a really good product for our guests. And we don't really think the whole time about it being our home. It's quite funny contradiction, really. And then I think the second group of people are people who are retiring to France and either have bought a property that has multiple houses on it, and that affords you the opportunity of renting out one or two of them, or that you need to top up your pension or your income from other areas, and you need to earn a bit more money, and therefore by owning a gîte is a good way of doing it. And the third kind of group are people like me and my husband Frank, who have given up our careers and our salaries and jumped into the deep end and bought a property and run it as a really serious gîte business. So we live in a converted tobacco barn, which is where you see me now, which is only 2 bedrooms. It's not very big. But on our property in the photos you saw earlier, there's a big 5 bedroom farmhouse and then a 1 bedroom cottage. And we rent the two of them out very successfully. It goes really well. But we pour everything we can into the business, our time, our money, and we really work at ensuring that we get lots of bookings and that our guests are really happy. So we're living on site. We're offering a concierge service. If you need a doctor's appointment, we'll get it for you. If you want extra cleaning or a private chef, we can arrange it. So there's that kind of, you can't really do that when you're living abroad and running a gîte here. It's a different kind of setup. But I think, yeah, what kind of gîte do you want to buy? All depends firstly on how you want to use it, how you're going to do it. And for us, it was because we need to earn as much money as we can. It was very important to have a very big gîte that we could rent out, rather than just one or two bedrooms.
Yeah, that makes total
But yeah,
sense. I also remember from one of your videos, you were talking about how you treat the gîte. Again, is this, are you just going to rent it out part-time while you're away versus having it as a serious business? There was one couple I remember you interviewed who, I guess just like seasonally, like in the spring, they literally move out of their big house, their nice big house, and move into like a tiny little converted cottage on the
bed.
property.
Yeah,
And again, because the mindset is like, hey, that's our money maker. That's where the money can be made. And we're okay for, again, the summer period or whatever to live in this smaller property. So again, this is like lifestyle planning stuff that you really need to think about before making the
exactly.
leap.
Yeah, exactly. And all of them have their own pros and cons. We're very tied up and busy running our place. Um, but if you live abroad and you have a gîte, then you aren't going to be that involved yourselves, but you're going to have a brilliant property manager who's going to represent you in welcoming guests and getting the cleaning done and maintaining the property. So it's a different kind of setup. But I think for us, when we were hunting for the property, it took us 2 years and we looked at 70 properties before we found this one.
Wow.
And what we really wanted was a very touristy area. So what we didn't want to have to do was to convince people to come to our property in a particular part of France that they hadn't really heard of before. I mean, France is a vast country, as you know, and there are massive differences between north and south and east and west. And So we didn't want to go to a place where tourists wouldn't normally come. We wanted to make it easy for ourselves, for our business, by being in a place where there is a lot of tourism. The only downside to that is that we have a lot of competition as well. But if you offer a really top class product, then there's no reason why you can't do well, even when you've got lots of competition. And actually, Valerie, who you mentioned earlier, she said something very, very interesting in my podcast with her. She said that um, the Americans and the British who come to France and start a Gîte, they bring something different to the table. That they understand um, guest relations, customer service, offering a product which goes above and beyond, ensuring that you go that extra mile to make sure that your guests are really, really happy. And I think that helps us all in ensuring that we have a product that maybe stands out from the crowd, which is really important.
Yes, and I think that is important. And you can see this not only in Gîte rentals, but even just the real estate market overall,
Yep.
where I don't know, it's just a cultural thing, I guess, where like I see a lot of real estate listings, and I'm like, you take this with a camera from the 1980 83, and
Yeah.
like there's no staging, there's almost no attempt to make it look desirable, and it's just very casual. And I think, oh my gosh, like
But that
you actually have a
offers,
great spot here, but it doesn't look like it.
yeah, exactly. But that offers us all a massive opportunity because if the marketing is really bad, not only for selling a house, but also trying to rent it out, and a lot of places are really bad, then it means if we do it well, again, we'll be head and shoulders above, we'll be booked more often than anyone else. So if you've got professional photos and you've got proper text and a website that functions and is attractive, then you're going to do really well. Um, and I think one of why Gîtes are so exciting is because anyone can run one. It is quite difficult moving to France and continuing your previous profession if you were a hairdresser or a banker or a builder or anything really. It is quite difficult unless you're fluent in the language and can create a network of clients and business for yourself very quickly. It is not going to be very easy. Okay, you can work maybe remotely, you can continue your job from America in France, perhaps maybe that's a possibility. But there are very few jobs that you can do if you don't speak the language very well, if you haven't got a massive network, and if you want to earn money straight away. And running Gîtes is one of the easiest ways of doing it because you're going to have an international clientele coming to stay with you. So they're not all going to be French. You don't, the French language is very important, but you don't have to be fluent in order to run your business. And especially in a very expat heavy area like we're in, our bank managers speaks English, our estate agents all speak English, and our house insurance company speaks English. So the actual running the nuts and bolts of the business, you don't need to be fluent in French. And property here is quite affordable. So, and because we're in a very rural setting, there are lots of properties that have a main house and then outbuildings or extra cottages. And those lend themselves to being rented out as gîtes. So our property is from the 16th century. And over time, more and more has been built on it. And there are census records throughout France that you can look up from about 1830 onwards, and you can see who was living in your property. And in our property, there were actually 5 different families living in different parts of the property, and that's why we have so many barns. They each have their own barns for their livestock and their hay, and so it means that we've actually got quite a big, well, it's called a hamlet, actually, quite a big hamlet, and that affords us to be able to earn some money. So I think that's why I'm so passionate about running Gîtes. It really does allow so many people to come to France and start earning some money.
That's excellent. I'll just pop in a quick question from Heidi because it follows on exactly what you're just asking or talking about. She wants to know, would you talk about how difficult it is to buy a property with Gîte potential, which the owner then wants to build for you? Like, I know there's some ads for that where maybe it is again like a small barn or outbuilding, but they don't want to sell you the property outright. They want to sell you the property, including like building it out for you. Is that just a
Hmm.
negotiation type thing, or have you seen
Ye-
that?
I haven't seen that necessarily. I think in our experience, it's actually quite difficult when you're house hunting here because, first of all, the asking price of the property is not necessarily the market value of the property. So there are occasions, especially with expats, with British people or Americans, they buy a property in France, they spend a lot of money making it how they want it, putting in air conditioning, putting in a pool, putting in travertine marble floors everywhere and underfloor heating. And then when they come to want to move, they want that investment back. And the estate agents or the real estate agents are very happy to put properties on at the price the vendor, the seller of the property wants to get for it. So that means the asking price that's advertised for a property might be higher than the actual market value. But I suppose if the vendor's not willing to sell it for less, then that is, well, it's the asking price. It's not necessarily the market value. So that's the first thing that slightly complicates things. The second thing is that if there is an existing Gîte being run on a property that's for sale, there's not often very much information about it. You're not really told how much money is it earning, how many weeks occupancy are there, do you have returning guests, where are the guests finding you, is it through your own website or Airbnb or booking.com, or there's a kind of lack of information given, I find, to purchasers of properties. And often they're just told, oh, the Gîte is doing really well. Well, yeah, what does that mean,
Right.
really well? Um, so you have to be very curious, I think, when you're house hunting. You have to really look at the property and don't just see it through your eyes of a place where you want to live, but look at it through the eyes of a guest and look at it also through the eyes of writing a business plan for it, which if you're applying for a visa, a work visa, and it's going to be on the back of you running a Gîte, you will need to write a business plan. And that's one of the services we offer is when clients of ours have found a property that they're really interested in, we can then either online or we can visit a property. We can either look at it online or go and visit it and come up with all of the advantages and disadvantages and red flags and issues we think there are with the property, along with the solutions and how much we think you can earn from it. So we can look at, is the marketing being done properly? Is the product good enough or does it need to be improved? Are the
Right.
facilities good enough? Is there a heated pool or is the pool not heated? Or, that all of these things will affect your business. So
And
yeah,
the
the
and the
house,
nice well, and the nice thing is you're not the agent. You're an independent person who's reviewing this. Not only independent, but with the knowledge necessary to be able to judge these things, which is terrific.
um,
Is that done? How is that engagement typically done? Is that do you offer like a package where it's a certain number of visits or a certain number of properties, or just
no, so it's all down to how long it takes us to do it. So if
okay?
it's a property that we're just looking at online, then it's not very expensive. If we have to go and visit somewhere and it's a couple of hours away, and then we have to write up a report and present it, then it can be slightly more expensive. But I think this is the one thing I've learned in the last 10 years is that running any kind of business in France when you're a foreigner is very complicated because it's a very different way of doing things in France than even when I lived in England or the Netherlands, and I was used to how taxation and business worked there. Here it's very different. And I think my one top tip is always get professional advice if you're, selling up in America and moving to France and you want to start a business and that business is the reason for your visa, you've got to make sure you get everything right. You can't make mistakes. This is too important to get wrong. So
Yep.
we say, you should definitely get a visa expert on board to help you through the process. You definitely get an accountant who can look at your worldwide financial situation and and your plans for the property that you're buying, and advise you on what kind of business should you be registering, and what kind of tax implications are there. The last couple of years, there has been a lot happening around taxation on small businesses and on Gîtes. There's a lot of political instability at the moment in France. We've had five prime ministers in the past, I think, less than 2 years. And the budget that's voted on every year, the finance law, about how much everyone's going to be taxed and stuff, it's hardly even getting through Parliament every year. It's really complicated. So there's been also a lot of instability about how much tax we would be paying, whether or not we have to charge VAT, which is like a sales tax, or not. And so really the only person who should be advising you on this is an accountant. Do not go on Facebook groups and decide that what you're being told there is correct to your financial situation, because it might well not be. It's only an accountant should be advising you on tax matters.
Yep.
And then,
I
of
couldn't
course,
I couldn't agree more.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you understand things about taxation and the U.S.-France tax treaty that I have absolutely no idea about. It is very, very specialized, and yeah, only listen to people like Tommy who know what they're talking about.
Well, thank you for that. And I pretend like I know a lot, which I do, but I still am not an international attorney. And if somebody had a complicated question that's not, black and white, absolutely, it's worth an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Get that, spend some money, hire a professional, get that answer up front, and
Mhm.
and you can move forward with confidence. A couple of quick questions. You mentioned the visa thing, and again, I know you're not a visa specialist, but is
No.
it common for that you know of for people there on the retirement visa, aka the VLS TS visitor visa? Is it possible for them to get a certain amount of income without getting a business visa, or is that something outside your comfort zone?
I'm afraid I don't know anything about that. I don't. Just because you run a business in France, that I don't think it has to be the reason why you get the visa. I know for British people, it's one of the easier ways of getting a visa.
Hmm.
So maybe it's the same with Americans, but I don't know specifically about the retirement visa,
Yep, no problem.
I'm afraid. Yeah.
And we'll follow up these questions if there are questions we can't answer. I'll do some research and probably get in touch with Valerie also and see if we can
Yeah.
get some of these questions answered. Um, I want to
The
you
question
mentioned
from,
this. Well, I just
sorry.
want to say, because you mentioned this earlier, and your Gîtes are obviously gorgeous. Um, do you get a lot of repeat business? Do you get a lot of people that come in and they love it so much, you're just like, oh my gosh, we're coming back next year, or we're going to
Yeah.
bring the family back next year?
Yeah. So 60% of our current bookings are return guests.
Wow.
Last week we had American guests from Colorado staying, and one of them, Margie, had been at her nail salon in Denver and heard what another client of ours had been saying about staying here. And so she had a look on her phone, saw the place, and she came and stayed a couple of years ago. Now she's come with a group of friends. And so, yeah, it's really fun how this works, how new people get introduced. But yeah, it's yeah, really important to us that we have regular guests.
Yeah. And I, you know, again, I've done a ton of short-term rentals and Airbnbs and Gîtes. One thing, something about the experience too is, again, the owners, the people who are there are going to welcome you, tell you about the local community, and hey, you should go to this restaurant. You should go, visit. Here's a great spot on the river you need to go see. That local knowledge is to me what kind of makes it. Obviously the place needs to be up to standard, but a lot of times it's that, like developing relationships with people that you trust, that are have your interest in at heart, that make these things amazing.
And that's a really good tip for when you're actually hunting for a property, when you're searching. Go and stay at bed and breakfasts and gîtes. Try and stay away from the big hotels, because then you can actually have conversations with the owners of the bed and breakfasts and gîtes. Talk to them about what it's like living here and what their favorite towns are, and why. You talked earlier about having gone to Salah, which is the crown jewel of the Dordogne. I wouldn't want to live there. It's a very important tourist spot. But we didn't know that until probably a year into us trying to find a property, that we actually clicked, this area isn't right for us, or for our business. So there's a wealth of knowledge out there that you can easily tap into by staying at gîtes and bed and breakfasts.
Yep. Denise is asking, and I'm going to scroll back through the questions in a minute, but I just saw this pop up. She's asking, did you and your husband have prior hospitality experience? Like, I know you lived in, was it the Netherlands before this?
Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was a new venture for you guys when you moved to France?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't need any prior hospitality experience. I think it helps if you can put yourself in the mindset of the guest. I think that's half of the trick of hospitality, is trying to think about what the guest wants and give it to them before they ask for it. But no, you don't have to have any experience at all. It's not important. You just have to throw yourself into it.
That makes sense. Is there something, and I don't want to sidetrack the conversation. Is there something about, like, when you guys are looking at a specific property? I know you mentioned, should be in a popular area. Are there specific features you're typically looking for? Are there styles that you think make a huge difference compared to, another, older properties versus new properties? Does it have a pool? Does it have the potential for a pool? Are there things like that you look for?
It all depends on what the guest in that area is going to be doing on their holidays. So if you're going to buy in Normandy, one of the main attractions or tourist attractions in Normandy is are the D-Day beaches.
So sorry, I'm going to try to. We use that if you guys can mute your microphones, that would be very helpful. Let me see if I can find who is not muted. Rupert, I'm going to mute everybody. So if you can just unmute in a moment. Let me do mute. All right. Now you should be able to.
I'm back.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry about that.
So yeah, it all depends on where you're going to be opening. If you're in Normandy, then a lot of people go there to visit the D-Day beaches, and they might not be staying for a whole week. They might only want to come from Paris for 3 or 4 nights. And if they're going to be out all day, then maybe you don't need a pool, because they're just not going to be there. And also it's in the north of France where the weather's not that great. In other areas, especially the south of France where it's very hot, you've got to have a pool, and preferably a heated pool so that you can extend the season. People can use the pool from spring to autumn. So yeah, it all kind of depends on where your location is and what the guests are going to be doing on holiday. So we almost have the best of both worlds here, because there are a lot of tourist attractions around here. So in our 1-bed cottage, we have couples who come and they want to explore the area. They want to visit the chateaus and go canoeing down the river and go to the markets and the amazing food and wine we have here. And then in the bigger house with the pool, we get families who all they want to do is spend time together and enjoy the summer and being outside. And so, yeah, it's a property has to lend itself to whoever is going to be using it, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes total sense. And like you said, the geography and the sites of the area will I guess send you in the right direction with that, hopefully, when you're looking. I'm just going to scroll back through some of the questions here. But if there's anything that pops up, Rupert, that you want to...
Well, I see the question from Stephen is a really interesting one. Do you have to buy the Gîte before you apply for the business visa? And yes, you do. So you are taking a leap of faith because the business visa is has to include a business plan that has to be accepted as being correct. You can't have a one-bedroom gîte and say that you're going to earn €100,000 a year off it. That's just impossible. So it's got to be a business plan that is grounded in some sort of reality. But obviously, you can't submit a business plan for a property you haven't bought yet. So yes, the first step is you have to buy the property, then you have to apply for the visa, and then hopefully you'll get it, and then you can hit the ground running, register your business, get the place ready for your guests, and make sure that you know about any restrictions or regulations there are about running your gîte. So this is something that is really important when you're house hunting or property hunting, that you understand if there are any national or local regulations around you running a gîte. One of the big problems in the last couple of years is that in certain very popular touristy parts of France, there are so many Airbnbs and so many gîtes that there is no longer enough affordable housing for long-term rentals for local people. So the local people are being pushed out. And you'll see this in Barcelona and Paris and Amsterdam and all these places where tourism is saturating the housing market. And so France is bringing in these regulations. In an area like us, which is very rural and it depends on tourism, there are very few regulations. But in other areas like Biarritz or near Mont Saint-Michel, then there are more regulations. So, for instance, in Paris or Bordeaux, you can only rent your Airbnb out or your gîte for up to 90 nights a year. Well, your business plan is not going to be that impressive off an occupancy of 90 nights. So you've really got to think that through. It's fine if you're going to be using the property as well yourself and you move out in order to rent out for 90 days. But just buying a property to rent out to tourists, it's not going to work. So yeah, it's really important that you understand what those rules and regulations are in each different area of France that you're interested in.
Yep. And I don't know if this is an issue in some of the rural areas. I know it is in Italy, but if you happen to buy a property that included some, maybe a farmland or something that was zoned, I guess, kind of as like agricultural land, sometimes the local prefecture will give like a first right of refusal, like the first option to local farmers to buy it first. So again, things
That's
like that
exactly
are
what happened here. So in our property, when the last farmer passed away in 1988, I think, all of the farmland was sold off to another local farmer. And we're quite pleased about that because then we have only got 2 acres of land left. We don't have the responsibility for, I think it was 100 acres that was sold off, something like that. We don't have the responsibility for that land. And there is always responsibility to maintain it properly. You can't just leave it to go fallow. There's always work needed to maintain it. If you've got trees next to a road, you've got to make sure that they're not going to fall on the road or the boughs aren't going to fall over. So yeah, we're quite pleased that we don't have all that maintenance. But yeah, for other people, they might want the land.
Yep, that's important. And for anybody asking, because I sometimes get the question, and Rupert, it's pretty obvious from what he said, to buy property in France as an American, you do not need a visa. You do not need to be a citizen. You technically don't even need to go to France. You can get a proxy person to help you buy it. But in this circumstance, obviously with a gîte, don't, unless you're hired Rupert and Frank to do all this research for you, please don't buy anything sight unseen based on a property listing on a agent's website or something you, again, like Facebook, something you've heard. You need to do your homework, your due diligence before you make that leap.
Absolutely.
All right, let's see.
Chris has asked if there are any special concerns if you already have Italian citizenship. Well, the answer to that is congratulations, because then you are a passport carrier of an EU country, which means you can come to France and do whatever you like. It's the yeah, having an EU passport is a wonderful thing in these days. So yeah, there's nothing specific you have to do. Um, there is when you actually start your business, you have to register things, and but you don't have to apply for a visa to work or live here. You can just come.
Yep. And I think the only thing like administratively, like if you weren't going to do the Gîte, you can live and work there. I think you just have to go to your local prefecture and register as a resident so that you can get your carte de séjour
You
or your carte vitale,
You
maybe.
don't have to have one.
Oh, you don't
A
as a
carte
EU?
vitale, carte vitale you do need, but a carte de séjour you don't. I don't have one. I've got a Dutch passport, so I am EU,
Okay.
and I haven't done it. My husband has done it. He has got a carte de séjour, but only because he wanted to log into some government website and he needed an ID, a French ID,
But it's
to
not
do that.
required.
But it's not required, no.
That's
But it
excellent.
is if you're from outside the EU. Yeah.
Well, thank you for straightening me out on that because I was under the impression you still did need to register. So
No, it's very strange. In Amsterdam, we had to register with the council and tell them when we were leaving as well. And then we moved here and we didn't have to tell anyone. It's very funny. But obviously, you have to pay the right kind of taxes. So
exactly.
they know of your ownership of the property and whether or not you're living here. But it's slightly more laid back, I think. There are more and more rules and regulations coming in France. There's this even Airbnb is now sharing your personal data with the French government every year. How much money have you earned? How much commission have you paid? How many nights occupancy have you had? How much tourist tax have they collected on your behalf? And actually, the French government is putting this information into your tax return before you've submitted it. So there is I know a lot of people who have flown under the radar with their Gîte businesses in the past, who haven't really registered, who haven't been collecting tourist tax, who haven't been declaring their income in France, which you have to do. And that is just no longer really possible. You're going to get into so much trouble if you start trying to run your business under the radar and not, yeah, ticking the boxes you should be.
Absolutely. And for anybody who's wondering, any money that you earn via Gîte in France, you definitely have to file and pay taxes in France. There's no exceptions in the tax treaty. Actually, in the tax treaty, it specifically says for a property that's located in France that you earn income from, you have to pay, and France is the primary right to tax. Now, income taxes you pay on that, and you will get a tax credit, or you should get a tax credit on your U.S. taxes when you file that. But another thing, Rupert, is that income you probably have to pay social charges on also.
Yep. Yep.
So that's an extra thing that I don't think in the tax treaty. I don't think social charges are considered a technical income tax. So you probably don't get those credited on
And
your
they are the
U.S.
higher
return.
taxes.
Yep.
The social premiums are really very high. There are two very different ways you can register your Gîte business. There are more, but the majority of people choose one of two. One is being a micro-entrepreneur, which is like being a small business. And the government has said we want to try and support small businesses by ensuring you don't pay much tax and you don't have to do any bookkeeping of your costs. You just have to tell us how much income you've generated. And if you have a Gîte, and if you get it classified, which means an inspector coming around and giving you a star rating from the Ministry of Tourism, so you're kind of officially registered, then you only pay 6% social premiums. It's nothing. It's absolutely incredible. But you pay it on your income, on your revenue, sorry, from the Gîte.
Like the gross revenue.
Exactly. So, and the second type of business is called régime réel, and that is more like a normal traditional business where you don't only declare your revenue, but also your real costs. So you do have to do full bookkeeping to demonstrate what costs you've got. And from that, they calculate your profit and you pay your social premiums on your profits. And that's what we're doing for the first time this year because of all these changes I was talking about that have been happening in the last couple of years. We've had to move to régime réel, and it's been a lot of hard work doing the bookkeeping. We're not used to that. And we're waiting to hear how much tax we're going to be paying on it because it's all done on a household basis. But we think the social premiums are going to be 40% on our profit.
Wow.
So one of them was 6% on your revenue, and now we're 40% on your on profit. And for us, that was a bit of a problem because when we started out, we knew that we weren't declaring our costs. So we thought, let's try not to make any costs. Let's do all the work we can ourselves on our
Yep.
Gîte business. And now we've had to change. And in fact, we need costs and we need an electric car because we can't put our current diesel car through the books because it's not eco-friendly. We've paid our mortgage off when in fact, maybe we shouldn't have because then we could have put the interest we were paying through the business to lower our profit. So actually for us, it's been quite complicated because we're now going to be massively hit by tax. Saying that, we've paid very little tax for the past 9 years. But because of all these changes, that's why I said it's so important that you have an accountant because they will explain to you how best to run your business. And
Yep. And
don't assume that you
they
can.
can probably do a hypothetical, of,
Yep.
hey, if you make this much income, here's what it looks like through the micro
Yep.
entrepreneur, and here's what it looks through regime
Yeah.
real, and you'll be able to get an
And
idea of, okay, well, you know,
if you're going to live abroad and run a Gîte and you've got property managers and a pool guy and a gardener and all these different people running the business for you, you're going to have very high costs. So then, in effect, your profit might not be that much, and it might be better then to be regime real. But again, only your accountant should be telling you this. But everything we've talked about now is about the process of getting to the point where you've bought a property and you're registering the business. And that is a massive chunk of work that you're going to have to do. But there's even more that still has to come. And this is the exciting bit. Once you've actually got your property, you've got to ensure that the product and the facilities and all of the extras that you're offering are amazing. You've got to, with whatever budget you have, try and make the place as comfortable and wonderful for your guests as you can. And then you need to look at your business itself. We say that running your business is a bit like having a clock. It's full of springs and hands and keys and a face and coils. And all of these things need to work together in order for the clock or your business to work properly. And there are so many rules and regulations about the security features of your swimming pool, where you have your fire extinguishers, how often you need your chimneys swept, what kind of business insurance you want. So there's a wealth of little things that you've got to get right. Where are the smoke alarms? How do you tell your insurance company about the smoke alarms you have? There are all these government rules and regulations that you have to do. And then the last two kind of massive chunks of the project before you open are the communication and marketing. So the communication is telling the story of your Gîte, telling potential guests why they should be booking it. What are the unique selling points of it? How are they going to experience their holiday when they're staying in your Gîte? And the marketing is how to advertise it. So as well as Airbnb, where are you going to be advertising the Gîte? You want Americans to come, you want Canadians to come, Germans, Brits, French, all of them use different platforms. And American families use Kid & Co. And couples in England might use Sordays. So there are all these different things, different platforms that you need to be aware of and sign up to if you can, in order to get as many guests as you can coming to stay with you. So that's the kind of whole process we help our clients with. That kind of once we've helped you find the right property or advised you on whether the property you found is the right one to run a Gîte business from, we can then help with all of that extra, getting the place ready to accept the guests. And that's when it really becomes quite wonderful, because once you have paying guests coming into your place and having a fantastic time, then not only will you be earning good money, but you'll be a very happy host.
And get those referrals like you were talking about from the hairdresser in
Yeah.
Denver.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's terrific. I see there's a few questions about the micro entrepreneur visa, and we're not going to answer that at this
I'm not
moment. And
really
what
the
I'll
right
do
person,
is
I'm afraid.
I'll do some research and get in touch with my friend Valerie, and when I send out the recording of this, hopefully I'll have some links and some information about you about that for
Yeah.
you.
Well, Cindy has asked a question I can answer. You're right. Cindy has said, did you have to switch our business registration because our business grew to a higher financial level? Yes and no. There are financial ceilings for being in both types of business. So for micro-entrepreneur, the ceiling was 188,700 euros a year revenue. It has been lowered this year to 77,700. So it's gone down by over 100,000 euros. And it's probably going to continue going down and down. I mean, in a way, it's a small business. So why is a company earning 188,000 euros a year a small business? It's not. So I think it is probably quite good that it's gone down. And because it came down and our revenue was higher, we had to go over. So yeah.
Excellent. Let me scroll back through here. If you guys, if you don't yet and you have some questions for Rupert, open up the chat box down at the bottom of the Zoom window, and I'm going to scroll through here and answer or ask Rupert any questions I see. So
can I answer the one from Mike
Yep.
Gill? He's asked, well, actually, a couple of people have asked about where do you look to find a property online? And I'm afraid, Mike, it is quite complicated because there isn't a central database of properties for sale. In the Netherlands, for instance, there's one website that every real estate agent puts their properties on. So you can find everything really easily. Here, it's not the case at all. There are some real estate agents that are slightly more expat. There are others that are very French. There are some properties that don't even come on the open market. They're on with notaires. They're being sold, for a deceased estate through a notaire. So really, you can't depend on just one platform to find a property that you can buy. You need to look at quite a range. So one of the better, bigger ones is one called Green-Acres, in English, greenacres.com, I think. And there they have quite a lot of them. But really, once you've decided on a département or an area of France that you really like, you need to find every single estate agent that has a shop there. And you need to go onto their websites individually because they're not all going to be putting them on the bigger websites necessarily. So just around us, I would say within half an hour of us, there are probably 15 estate agents I can think of. And the only way you're going to know about all of their properties is by going onto all of their websites individually.
Yeah, this is something that's
it's
just very different than the United States, where we have what's called the MLS, or the multiple listing service, which basically all agents plug into, and the various websites plug into that also. So you can see virtually, all listings kind of across the country. But if you're having trouble finding something online, and you're serious about doing this, either, again, get in touch with somebody like Rupert, who's in the southwest of France, and maybe they can do some of this research for you. Or, again, there's nothing like putting boots on the ground. And, obviously you need to maybe work on your language skills, or get in touch with agents ahead of time to see, how well they speak English. But go visit, go visit and talk to some agents, and hopefully, as Rupert mentioned earlier, hopefully if they're advertising Gîtes, maybe they've done some homework and maybe have some of the data about the Gîte and how it's being run and things like that. But again,
they should do.
All information that will be important to know. All right, Rupert, I don't see any other questions in the chat right now, but is there anything that you wanted to mention? You did get some great compliments. I put the link to your properties in the chat, and people are saying how stunning they are, which they absolutely are. Is there anything that you want to share that we're not asking about?
Just that this week is our 10th anniversary of having the keys to our place, and we have not regretted a single second of our time in France. It is a beautiful, well, not all of France is very beautiful, but especially where we live, and there are loads of other places, it is an absolutely stunning and tranquil and peaceful place to live. We're surrounded by nature. And certainly in the Dordogne, the French are super welcoming and warm and friendly. And even if you don't speak French very well, they don't care. They will patiently wait for you to stumble about till you have come up with the sentence, form the sentence in your head and said it out loud. So yeah, it's just a wonderful lifestyle. We don't work 9 to 5 anymore. We don't have to commute. We don't have team meetings and office politics, and we get to welcome lovely people to come and share where we live. And yeah, I can only recommend it from the bottom of my heart.
That's excellent. That's perfect. Perfect sentiment to leave the chat on. And like I said, I will be sending out a recording of this session. I'll maybe do a little editing along with any links that we've mentioned here, and we'll definitely have Rupert back on. And maybe I don't know, technology wise, maybe we could do a walkthrough of your Gîte, or we can talk about specific kind of I don't know, amenities and things that your Gîtes have that you found have been
Yeah,
very popular for guests, something like that. Also,
love to.
I know you're not too far from Bergerac. That is one of the spots that we had talked about with for doing a retirement retreat. So maybe we'll have to talk about using your Gîtes as
Yeah,
our spot there. Anyway,
yeah.
thank you,
It's a
everybody.
lovely. It's a great place to retire to. There's also a great expat community here, so yeah, you'll find like-minded people.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Rupert, and I'm so
My
glad
pleasure.
that
Thank
we've
you,
met.
everyone, and thank you, Tommy.
Yes, everybody have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.